Alright, hello, my name is Alex Cho, and today for PSET4, I'll be presenting on NFTs, a new form of art market and authentication. So I have a little diagram here. There's on the left, it's a old 2019 Devin Booker basketball card, and this has gone for $2,000 recently, and it's an edition of 8, so there's only 8 of these cards in the world. And on the right, I have the Hollow Icon Legendary, which is an NFT of a play of Devin Booker that I'll show later. This is an edition of 50, so there are only 50 of these that exist in the world. But these two are actually the same price right now. So they're both selling for about $2,000. So I'll talk about how NFTs have kind of revolutionized collectibles and the art market. So starting with what an NFT is. An NFT is a non-fungible token. So it's defined as a financial security consisting of digital data stored in a blockchain, a form of a distributed ledger. So the whole idea of it being non-fungible is the fact that one, um, they cannot be interchanged with one another without having the same value. So if I were to have a US dollar and get a different dollar back, then both of those dollars would have the same value of $1 for both parties. Whereas if I was to use, let's say, a Kobe Bryant Topps Chrome Refractor card compared to a 1996 Skybox number 30, which can be seen here, these two cards on the right are different, right? It's clear that they're different and they have different prices. The one on the right goes for $33,000 if it's brand new, and the one on the left goes for $13,000. So obviously, if I were to give the one of these cards to someone and received the other one back, it would not be a fair trade. Whereas if I were to give the dollar on the left on top to someone and receive the dollar on the bottom, it would be the same value. So that's the whole idea of non-fungible, and it's a token because it's stored online. So what's the problem with art? So something like this Kobe Bryant basketball card, it can get stolen, it can get damaged, reducing its value, and it can even be fabricated, right? Someone can always just try to forge a copy of it, and then there are two copies of the card. And let's say the forgery is really good, then at that point we cannot really authenticate which one is more real. It'll be hard to tell. So the blockchain kind of gets rid of all three of these problems. The first one is a little iffy, of course, because you can always be hacked and you can always click on a link or a malicious scam site. There's a bunch of things, but generally it is quite safe. So not gonna explain a blockchain too much, but the idea is that there's a ledger that has all the information um, on it, and it's constantly being sent out for each new transaction. So the moment information such as me owning this card is put onto the blockchain, it just is there forever. So anybody who has the ledger and for future transactions, they can just go back and see, and my information will be there that I'm the owner of this card. So this is really good for art, obviously, because it solves these three problems. And so digital art is the one that's most associated with NFTs nowadays. There's a lot of different software tools like I have Photoshop and GIMP. Those are two really popular ones. And it's the easiest type of art to give value to the general public. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of talk about how NFTs are kind of a scam. You're paying for a JPEG, you can just right click and save. Well, that is all true, right? You can just save any image you find online, but the idea is that they're selling the true ownership of that art piece to someone, and that ownership is permanent because it's on the blockchain and everybody can see this and validate this. So if you think about it, these are the same problems that happen with contemporary art, right? A painting drawn by me would not be the same price as a painting drawn by Picasso or any new contemporary artist because, well, we are not the same person. No matter what we drew, if even if it was the same thing, even if I made a copy of his art, it would not be the same value. The quality, well, that's something that's very subjective that I'll get into later as I show some examples, as well as the general hype, which brings about volume in trading. So let's say I made the next Starry Night, it wouldn't matter because there wouldn't be that many people who would know about it or who would want to buy it or create a market for it. So these three are the biggest problems with contemporary art that also come behind digital art as well for NFTs. So here's some examples I have of NFTs. So on the left, the Devin Booker Hollow Icon Legendary that I talked about. Um, might not load, but it's essentially it stored a video, right? The NFT doesn't have to be a picture. It's just more commonly referred to as the picture because that is the simplest form for people to kind of understand. But there's, it's all digital, so you can have stuff like this where you have a video, which it's not loading, but that's okay. Or something like a picture in the middle, right? This is more traditional type of art where it's an actual art piece. And then you can have something completely contemporary or abstract, I guess, on the right. That's called a merge by pack. So this is literally just a white dot in the middle of a black screen, and it they're selling for about 0.11 ETH. So currently, ETH took a nosedive. So this is about like $200, which is crazy if you think about it. You're paying for a $200 white circle on a black square. So there's a lot of different levels to the NFTs in terms of quality and what you'd like, but some people consider this a higher form of art, whereas other people might just think, oh, this is a bunch of nonsense. So, like I said, all this art is being authenticated and carried out on the Ethereum blockchain. Well, not all of it is on Ethereum, but a majority of the most popular NFT projects are on Ethereum. That is because Ethereum allows for smart contracts. So these smart contracts are basically just the algorithms which allow users to mint or create these NFTs as well as sell on secondary markets such as OpenSea and Coinbase. And one of the reasons why Ethereum is so popular is because it has these well-established marketplaces. So um, from personal experience, I used to trade with Solana as well, and there are over 5 or 4 Solana marketplaces. So it's very decentralized. Whereas for Ethereum, if the project is not on OpenSea, it is most likely a scam, or it is pretty much a scam. Because OpenSea is very easy to use. It's very easy to get the credibility, and it's very easy to sell and buy, as well as mint, and as well as the wallet integration. And there's a low ticker fee of 2.5%. The other two, Coinbase NFT and X2Y2, are on the rise, but they are nowhere near close to OpenSea's volume. OpenSea does $2.4 billion in volume this past month, whereas X2Y2 was the second highest, and that was only 214 million. So you can see that there's a huge discrepancy between these. So in order to push a transaction on the blockchain, you have to pay gas. Gas is what essentially dictates the price of NFTs, and I'll talk more about this later. As I try to set up a model to kind of find the price or between the primary and secondary market, which is minting and buying and selling. So gas, I'm not going to get into the semantics of too much, but it's basically a premium. So every time you want to push some type of information onto the blockchain, you have to pay gas. Whether that is confirming that you sold something, confirming that you bought an NFT, confirming that you minted an NFT, authenticating a collection. There's everything that you want to put into a blockchain, you have to pay for gas. And gas can get very expensive. So here's the market interaction. You have a seller who makes the NFT, right? This could be one person, this could be a whole team. You need people making the art, you need people promoting it on Twitter, on Discord, creating community, making white papers, talking about their plans with the NFT, right? The more NFT seems more fleshed out, the more likely someone is to get into it, right? The biggest problem with NFTs is that it's a scam right now. So a lot of these white papers try to kind of explain their thought process on how it's not just a picture or not just digital art. It could be used for something else. There's a bunch of different things in the market right now. But the whole idea is to just build the hype aspect as well as the credibility with maybe an established artist or someone. So then, once they find enough people and they're ready for a drop, they initiate the smart contract onto the blockchain. So for the seller, this is the only price that they pay. All they do is it's a large sum of Ethereum because it's a large transaction, and gas. actually scales with the size of the transaction plus a premium to send it faster. So in this case, it's a very large contract. So it's very expensive in upfront cost, but they make this back using the royalties. So they initiate the smart contract, and then you have the first round, or what I'll call the primary market, which is minting. So buyers can mint the supply, and then in doing this, they're paying a lower price. It's the normal price given by the seller plus the gas in order to authenticate their purchase of it onto the blockchain. And then there's another step where buyers have to authenticate their collection on the secondary market. So what this does is it's kind of telling uh, OpenSea, yes, I'm willing to sell this project, and it puts that onto the blockchain as well. It's kind of like a second form of confirmation and just an extra level of security, which also costs gas. And then from there on, the secondary market is simply just buying and selling like a normal asset. So you can go on OpenSea, you can buy someone's Moonbird that's up for sale, but you can also sell yours after you buy it too. But this is all takes gas as well because you have to confirm these transactions onto the blockchain. And then anytime someone buys or sells on the marketplace, there's always royalties that are coming out. So OpenSea takes that 2.5%, and there's also another percentage that goes directly back to the owner, which is, if you think about it, quite lucrative for the seller. Even if your NFT doesn't do that well, you can always, as long as you have high volume and there's a lot of transactions, each of those transactions will have a percent royalty taken off of it and coming back to the original. So it's the seller wants the project to do very well, and it is quite easy for the seller to make their money back from initiating the smart contract. So, like I said, this is just a quick rundown of exactly what I said. So for the seller, the liabilities are only the gas for initiating the smart contract, as well as fees for paying the team, paying the artist or whatnot. But the benefits are there's so many benefits. You get the continued royalties from every single transaction that ever occurs for that collection. Maybe some community engagement for future projects, which can cause the price to go up, as well as collaboration with other projects, which is really important. For the minter, you can think of the minter as like the first people in. So kind of like how a stock IPOs and there's people who buy it in the beginning. That's what the minter is. You're liable for the gas that you paid to mint it, mint price or the price of the NFT, as well as the gas for authenticating and the royalties. And so, making money as a minter is very dependent on the price. But there's the benefit that all you are paying for is the price of the NFT. So you have a lower floor price for profit. So it's essentially longing the project, right? You're paying less in the beginning upfront as like an early bird special, but you have the chance to kind of sell it for more profit than you would have had you just bought it off secondary market. Because from the perspective of the buyer on the secondary market, you're paying a lot, right? You're paying for the gas for purchasing, royalties from buying and selling, and you have to pay gas to authenticate the collection as well. So buying secondary market is only worth it if the price of the NFT goes below the mint price afterwards, and you can get it and you're basically shorting it. You're believing that you can buy it for cheaper later. So I gave an example. I tried to kind of quantify this whole thing into some numbers. Obviously, gas is kind of the biggest part of this stack simplified. I just made gas a constant G, which is not true because, like I said, it scales with the size of the transaction as well as how fast you want to get the transaction off. There's a lot of nuances to minting that I won't talk about, but instead I'll just talk about how pricing works for primary and secondary market. So for primary market, we're assuming that at t equals 1, we're going to have a price P sub t, or P sub 1. So the total cost for buying uh, in the primary market is the mint price, M, plus the gas to authenticate this mint, plus the authentication of the collection itself. So basically, auth is like I said before, telling OpenSea that, oh, I'm ready to sell this project, kind of like the secondary check. So that comes out to M plus 2G. And then if you sell that at P1, well, you have the royalties R. So I'm just combining OpenSea and project royalties together. So the profit would just be 1 minus R times P1 minus M plus 2G. So this is pretty straightforward. A little more complicated for the secondary market because when you're buying off the secondary market, you have to pay for the royalties actually when you buy it, plus the gas for authenticating as well as for pushing this buy into the blockchain. So this makes total cost 1 plus R times P1 plus 2G. But if you're selling it later at P2, then your profit would just be this simplified. So it's delta P2 to 1, so the change in price, minus the royalties for both prices, because you're paying once when you're selling and you're paying once when you're buying, and minus gas. So the price discrepancy comes so when primary is greater than secondary. So it's better to mint than buy on secondary market when P1 minus M is greater than the change in price minus royalties times P2. So this was just setting these two equations equal to each other and then setting the inequality. And secondary is for otherwise. So a consequence of this is, if you can see, the biggest thing is P1 minus M. So we're assuming that P1 happens slightly after mint. So once everything has minted out, there's going to be a price on the market. So in this case, this is the same NFT that I showed on the right here, Moonbirds. So on they minted around mid-April. So in mid-April, the price was about 50. So the price is the blue line, and then the horizontal white lines is the volume. So you can see there was a great volume that died off a lot after its mint, which is a problem with NFTs that I'll talk about later. But you can see that after the mint, the price was at 10. So in this case, for Moonbird specifically, the mint cost was 2.5 ETH. Yet when it started trading on OpenSea, it started at 10. So in this case, the primary would have made P1 minus M. So that would have been 7.5 ETH. Whereas if I waited and bought one on secondary market and then sold it the day after when it was about 20 ETH, that delta P2 to 1 would have been 10 ETH minus the royalties, which we'll say about 20% of P2. So 20% of 20 ETH is 4 ETH. So it would have been 6 ETH profit instead of 7.5. So in that case, when the price goes up, a certain amount, minting is way better. But however, if the price were to have gone down, then the inequality would have flipped the other way. So it's very dependent upon price. So like I said, everything's dependent on price, but determinants of price is really the problems with NFTs. It's art in the end of the day. Art is very hard to subjectively put a price on, even with real art. And then, especially now that we have digital art in the form of NFTs, it's even harder. The authentication just solves kind of the nuances, but it doesn't really help these problems. The IPO, which I'm calling P1 that I talked about before, it depends very greatly on M and G. So the mint cost as well as gas. Gas, like I said, has a priority queue system where you can pay the minimum amount of gas to get the transaction through, as well as pay extra gas to incentivize your transaction to be pushed first. So that can kind of put you further in line, but that will cost more. So that would increase the price. So if a lot of people gas very high, then the price will naturally reflect that because the people who bought it want to make their money back. Whereas if there's not a lot of people trying to get one NFT, then the gas will be low. Information is very non-public. There's a lot of alpha groups and cook groups, as what they're called, where they share insider information with maybe it's through a friend or it's through having a project, and it's not public, basically. So some people have the competitive edge over others. There's a lot of automation that happens as well, gas optimization, a lot of programs that work like this that kind of make it hard for someone who's just manually doing everything to make a profit, as well as whitelist. Whitelist is the current, it's trying to avoid what they're called gas wars by giving people priority access or a kind of time of window to mint without worrying about gas. But getting a whitelist is very dependent on how many projects you have or the connections you have. So it makes it very hard for it to be a fair market. Like I said, like you saw with the problem with the volume, there's a lot of recency bias due to oversaturation in the market. There's always a new project every other day. But even if a project does very well, like in the case of Moonbirds, it still loses a lot of volume after a while as new projects pop up, which makes it hard to sell and buy. And there's a lack of regulation and a fear of money laundering. These are really large sums. Moonbird's 20 ETH floor right now. 20 ETH is not, that's not chump change. It's a lot of money. So people are afraid that it's unsustainable and there's no real regulation. So there's might probably money laundering going on. So yeah, in the future of the market, I definitely see there's going to be tighter regulations, taxes. That's one of the three certainties of life. It's definitely going to happen for the NFT market. Um, there's going to be a more accurate modeling of pricing, I think for sure. People are going to be more conscious about the way they're spending money. There's a lot of when I made this model, I had to assume that people would not sell for less than what they bought it for, but that actually happens surprisingly a lot, where people mint something and then they sell it for less price for some reason. I'm not sure if it's fear of FUD or if it's just, I'm not really sure, but it does happen a lot more than you would think, and it's very confusing. So hopefully more accurate pricing for everybody. Public sentiment's a big part, of course. A lot of people see NFTs as like a scam, money laundering, like I said. But that's bound to change as the world becomes more digital, and as well as the integration with the art market. I believe that during COVID, they had a lot of digital auctions because they could not meet in person, and that kind of spurred on this increase in interest in digital art collections and NFTs. So once it gets more integrated into that field, I think it has more options to grow. And if you see, I put a pie chart here. Right, like I said, NFTs can be anything. It could have been that video, it could be a picture, it could be, a bunch of code, it could be a dot on a black square. But most of the volume of NFTs in USD traded is in collectibles because people just want something that they can wrap their head around. It's like this concept is a lot easier than, let's say, buying Air Jordans in the metaverse or just owning a JPEG piece of art. Because collectibles, at least, it makes them people feel like they own something. And I think this is a part of public sentiment where they kind of have to grow out of it. So I'm ending this with two pictures. So we have a Bored Ape Yacht Club on the right, NFT. This one sold for about 700 ETH. But then we have this abstract art on the left. This one sold for about 5 million, I believe, 5,700,000. So the art on the left is a real piece of art. It's digital work, but it sold for almost double the on the right. But the one on the left is considered more legitimate because it's real art made by a real artist, whereas the one on the right is an NFT. So it kind of see how public perception kind of plays a role. I'd say, in my opinion, these two are both pieces of art. But as an engineer, it's hard to kind of subjectively objectify these things, right? But I guess that's the whole problem in art. I just thought it was interesting to kind of show you how the one on the left is worth two times more than the one on the right. But if you think about it, the artistic value of the one on the right, some might say is better. So that's my presentation, and thank you for listening.